Ava, it was supposed to be just another uneventful day, another monotonous shift guarding this long-haul freighter. We were deep in charted space, with nothing but empty void around us, making our way slowly to a colony world to deliver supplies and materials they couldn't produce on their own. I was chatting with one of the newest crew members, a Tan named Alex. The Tans had only been known to the galaxy for a year or two, but what they lacked in technological sophistication, they more than made up for with paranoia and advanced armor systems. That armor was the first thing anyone noticed about the Tans. Looking at one, you'd think they had spent their entire existence in constant battle, given the sheer amount of protective gear they wore. Strangely, no one had ever seen a Tan without their armor. When they first appeared on the galactic scene, they claimed to breathe an entirely different atmosphere, methane, if I remember correctly, unlike the oxygen that the rest of the galaxy breathes. Our leaders were, of course, skeptical because that didn't fully explain the overwhelming armor. They later clarified that the armor was also a precaution against the dangers of methane when exposed to electrical wiring, and that explanation was more acceptable. "Wait," I said, waving a clawed hand through the air. "So you're telling me Tans don't have a homeworld? You had to have come from a planet at some point, right?" The armored Tan just shrugged in that distinctive way of theirs, indicating both confusion and a reluctance to delve into the topic. "Well, of course we originated from a planet at one time, but we've been a fleet-based species for so long that not even our oldest records mention a homeworld." I guess that made some sense. After all, there were plenty of fleet-based species in the universe, but every one of them at least had a record of what happened to their original planets. "Why don't you guys find a nice planet to terraform? It shouldn't be too hard, given how long you've been spacefaring," I suggested. He fiddled with his hands, considering his next words. "It's just never been a priority for our command, I guess. And while we're on the subject, we could easily set up methane-filled quarters for you on the ship if you didn't want to stay in that suit all the time." He looked down, fiddling with his hands again. "Well, if you did that, I'd have to spend quite a while in an airlock to avoid contaminating the oxygen-breathing crew. And I can take the suit off, you know. I've got a methane mask in my cabin for when I want to get out of the suit. I just don't do it often." "Why is that?" I asked. "You don't want anyone to see you without the suit?" "Yeah, there's that. I'm a pretty shy and private person, but that's only part of it," he admitted, his fingers still twitching nervously. "Once, during a spacewalk in a basic suit, one without armor, I got hit by space debris. It tore through the suit, and I almost died. After that, I always wear the armored versions, especially in environments that could kill me if my suit ruptures again." I nodded in understanding, mimicking a Tan gesture I'd learned from Alex. "That makes sense. I'm sorry for prying. I didn't realize there was a history there." He was about to respond when the ship suddenly lurched violently, throwing me off balance. Alex caught me before I hit the floor, and I thanked him as the green emergency lights flicked on. The captain's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Attention all crew, we've been ripped out of hyperspace and are currently being boarded by pirates. All non-combat personnel report to your evacuation areas. Combat personnel, report to your stations. This is not a drill." Alex and I exchanged a glance, and we both pulled out our weapons, a plasma gun for me and a kinetic rifle for him, as we prepared for battle. I couldn't help but wonder, why would a fleet-based species like the Tan use kinetic weapons that could puncture and rupture a ship's hull? Come to think of it, a lot of what Alex had told me didn't really add up. I'd have to ask him about it after we repelled these boarders. The fight was fairly standard except for one thing. Alex's kinetic rifle was incredibly effective when targeting enemies in cover, places we couldn't reach with plasma-based weapons. His accuracy was uncanny, almost as if a targeting computer was guiding him. He was quick and precise, more like a machine than a man. We pushed the pirates back to their airlocks, where they panicked and fired wildly, most shots missing us by a wide margin. Alex led the charge, his heavy armor making him the ideal choice for the counterboarding operation. But just as he crossed into the airlock, an explosion rocked the hallway, and he was thrown down the corridor, landing in a heap of metal. Air started to be sucked out into the void as the umbilical was severed, but the blast doors quickly sealed shut, and the room refilled with oxygen. I sat there, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. Then I remembered Alex. I sprinted over to where the Tan lay immobile. My hands shook as I inspected the damage. A massive hole gaped in the stomach area of his armor. His suit was breached. "Get the emergency methane tank, quick!" I shouted to another crew member as I frantically checked for any damage beyond the torn suit. But instead of blood and tissue, I found mechanical parts where a body should be. "What's going on?" I whispered, barely noticing when Alex's voice broke through the panic. Hey, look at me," he said, his tone calm despite the danger. "I don't even know what I'm looking at." I stammered. "Where's your body?" "Don't worry, everything's going to be fine," he assured me. "Nothing critical was hit except the battery. I'll be fine." I was on the verge of tears. "What are you even talking about? You've got a massive suit breach, and you're saying you're fine?" He sighed, still calm. "Listen, I know you have a lot of questions, and I'll answer them soon, I promise. Just don't freak out." I choked back a sob. "Okay, just hang on. Help is on the way." Suddenly, a sharp hiss came from Alex, or more accurately, from his head. The faceplate, which I had always thought was a solid piece of metal, began to fold and retract. After several clicks and whirs, it finally opened to reveal something I could never have expected. Inside the metallic head was a tiny chair, and sitting on that chair was a small, hairless, bipedal creature about a fifth the size of Alex. It was wearing a bright orange jumpsuit with strange markings. I stared in stunned silence as the crew member I had sent for the emergency methane tank rushed over, only to stop dead in their tracks at the sight of the tiny being inside what should have been Alex's head. The small creature opened its mouth, showing teeth, and with Alex's voice said, "I suppose you have a lot of questions. Given the circumstances, that's understandable.